My girlfriend told me she needed space to work on herself, but when I helped her move out, I found a set of luggage tags with another man's name hidden in her drawer. I know it might sound impulsive, but when I opened the bottom drawer of Emma's nightstand that morning, I felt my chest tighten in a way I hadn't expected. 28M, had spent the last few weeks helping her pack and move out after she told me she needed space to work on herself. I wanted to give her that space, even if it hurt, even if every day without her felt like a small cut I had to hide from everyone else. But seeing that small velvet pouch tucked away, the kind of thing you wouldn't notice unless you were really looking, made me freeze. I lifted it carefully and saw 2 luggage tags with a name I didn't recognize: Alex Harper. At first, I tried to convince myself it meant nothing. Maybe Alex Harper was just a coworker, someone she had traveled with for work in the past. Maybe these tags were left over from some previous trip, but the tags looked new, the kind of thing you only get for a trip you're about to take, not for something long forgot. My hands shook as I held them, realizing that the person I thought I knew, the woman I had trusted and supported through so many ups and downs, was hiding something from me. The thought settled in my chest like a stone. I went about helping her with the larger furniture and boxes, trying to act normal, trying not to let her see how shaken I was. She chatted lightly as we carried her bookshelves and dresser down the stairs, her laughter ringing through the apartment as if nothing was wrong. I smiled, laughed back, but my mind kept drifting to the tags. Who was Alex? Why hide these in the first place? My heart thumped in a rhythm I couldn't control, a mix of suspicion, fear, and disbelief. Every time she looked at me and smiled, it felt like a knife twisting deeper. We packed her car and the moving van, loading each box carefully. The apartment felt smaller, emptier, every step echoing through the hallways like a countdown. I tried to focus on the task, telling myself not to dwell on the pouch and the tags, but it was impossible. I had to know. I glanced at her when she wasn't looking and caught a flicker of something in her eyes, a hesitation, almost like she was guarding a secret she thought I wouldn't find. The realization hit me. Everything she had said about needing space to work on herself might have been a half-truth, a story constructed to keep me from seeing what she was actually doing. When we finally finished packing and the last box was in the truck, I helped her take a deep breath. She seemed exhausted but relieved, happy to have her life in boxes, ready for the next chapter. I tried to focus on the relief she was feeling, but the tags kept pulling at my attention. I couldn't stop thinking about them, about the name Alex Harper, about the trips she might be planning, about the life she was keeping hidden from me. I wanted to ask her, demand answers, but I didn't. I wasn't ready to confront the possibility that the woman I loved might have been building a secret world without me. That night, after the moving truck drove away, I sat in my apartment staring at the empty corner where her bed had been. My phone buzzed with a message from her thanking me again for helping, but I barely read it. I kept thinking about the velvet pouch, the luggage tags, the name Alex Harper. I realized that trust, once broken, wasn't something that could be repaired with apologies or reassurances. The weight of not knowing, of imagining what she was hiding, pressed down on me like a heavy fog. I stayed awake long into the night, replaying the past weeks in my head, questioning every moment, every word, every touch. The truth was out there, just beyond my reach, and I knew I couldn't rest until I found it. After that first night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to the luggage tags, the hidden name, and every little detail of the past weeks that suddenly made less sense. I went over our conversations, trying to see if I had missed something, any hint of this secret life she had been living. Everything seemed normal in hindsight, which made it worse. The casual jokes about trips, the stories about her coworkers, the late night messages, everything now felt like it had a double meaning I hadn't been able to see. I decided I had to find out more before I confronted her. I started small, checking social media profiles I knew she had, looking for posts that might reveal travel plans, tagging another name, or pictures she hadn't shared with me. It was exhausting, invasive, and a little pathetic, but I needed answers. Hours of scrolling revealed subtle clues. A comment here, a like there, posts that hinted at locations I hadn't known she had visited. None of it was direct, but it painted a picture that made my stomach churn. The thought that she might have been planning a trip with someone else while telling me she needed space twisted inside me like a knife. The next day, I called her workplace under the guise of checking on her moving schedule, trying to sound casual while slipping in questions about upcoming projects or conferences. I wanted to know if Alex Harper was somehow connected to her job, if there was a professional explanation. The receptionist mentioned a conference she was supposedly attending, but the dates didn't line up with the timing of the luggage tags, and there was no mention of any Alex Harper. The pieces weren't fitting together, and that only made me more desperate. I needed to see something concrete, proof that would confirm what I suspected. I started searching for flights and hotel bookings using her email, trying to see if any confirmation numbers were linked to her account. My heart raced every time I found a hit. One evening, I found a hotel reservation under Alex Harper's name that matched the dates that the tags suggested. It was for a weekend in a city several hours away, a city she had mentioned she had never been to. The realization hit me like a punch. She had been planning trips, possibly entire weekends with him, while telling me she needed space to work on herself. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and strangely hollow. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how much I had trusted her. I thought I knew Emma, that I understood her patterns, her moods, her humor, the small rituals we had developed over years of dating. But now all of that seemed like a constructed illusion, a carefully curated version of her that fit only the parts of her she wanted me to see. I felt foolish for believing in something that was never fully real, for thinking that honesty and love could protect me from being left in the dark. I spent the evening walking aimlessly, phone in hand, revisiting every memory that now carried a different weight. The movie nights she insisted we have alone, the road trips she suggested, the quiet mornings we spent together, all of it seemed filtered, a version of reality designed to keep me unaware of this other light. I realized that I had to make a choice: confront her immediately and demand the truth, or step back and let the evidence accumulate until I could face it with a clear head. The rational side of me, the one that still cared, wanted to understand her motives before reacting. The hurt part wanted to scream, to make her see how deeply she had wounded me. In the following days, I pieced together more information. Flight confirmations, small hotel receipts she had left behind, and patterns in her messages revealed the scope of her deception. Alex Harper was not just a name on luggage tags, he was a real person, someone she had been seeing while telling me she needed space. The clarity was painful, but it also gave me direction. I knew what I had to do next, though it terrified me. I would have to confront her, but I needed to go in with all the facts, with nothing left to ambiguity or plausible deniability. By the end of the week, I had a folder full of digital evidence and a head full of questions that demanded answers. My heart still ached when I thought about what this meant for our relationship, for the trust we had built over years. But deep down, I knew I couldn't stay passive any longer. I had to face the truth, no matter how devastating. That evening, as I stared at the city lights from my apartment window, I realized that everything I thought I knew about Emma was over. The next step would define whether we had any chance of rebuilding anything at all, or if this was the end of a chapter I wasn't ready to close. The morning I decided to confront her, I felt a strange mix of dread and resolve. I, 28M, had spent the last week compiling everything I could find: emails, flight confirmations, hotel booking, timestamps from her phone messages, and it was enough to make my stomach churn. I kept replaying the conversations in my head, imagining how she might respond, how much anger or guilt might show on her face. When I parked outside her apartment, the cold air made my lungs ache, but it also cleared my head. I knew I needed to see her, hear her explanation, and finally put this uncertainty to rest. She opened the door as if nothing had changed, casual and relaxed. I noticed immediately the little details I had missed before: the slight curl of her hair, the way she stood with her weight on one leg, the small creases on her shirt from a day spent moving around. It all seemed familiar, yet every glance carried the weight of the week I had spent uncovering what she had hidden. I stepped inside, careful not to let the evidence I had collected fall from my pockets. I wanted her to see that I wasn't Nod or V, that I knew more than she realized. I started with questions that weren't really questions, statements that forced her to react. I mentioned the luggage tags, the name Alex Harper, the travel arrangements that didn't match the story she had given me. Her face changed subtly at first, a flicker of confusion or guilt, then a careful composure that I had seen before in moments when she was cornered. She said she could explain, and I could hear the hesitation in her voice, the pause before she chose her words. I sat back and waited, feeling the tension rise between us like a living thing. As she spoke, it became clear that Alex Harper was more than a name on a tag. He was someone from her past, someone she had allowed to enter her life again while keeping me at a distance. She insisted that it meant nothing, that she wasn't in love with him, but the lies of omission and secrecy spoke louder than any words she could offer. Every story she had told me about needing space to work on herself now seemed like a convenient cover, a way to explore another relationship without confrontation. My chest tightened with a mix of betrayal and disbelief, a feeling that left me almost paralyzed. I realized in that moment how much trust had been violated. I had helped her pack, carried boxes, sorted clothes, and made her moving day easier because I loved her and wanted to support her, yet she had hidden this other life from me. The anger rose in waves, each one bringing a deeper understanding of just how manipulated I had been. I wanted to yell, to demand that she feel the pain she had caused, but something in me held back. Instead, I listened, absorbing the details, weighing the truth against the deception. By the time our conversation ended, I felt like I had been through a storm. I knew what had happened, and there was no way to undo it. The person I had trusted implicitly had chosen to keep a part of her life hidden, and that choice defined the boundaries of our relationship. I didn't know yet what would happen next, whether there would be reconciliation, forgiveness, or a clean break. What I did know was that I could no longer be passive. I had to decide how to respond, and that decision would shape everything moving forward. After she left, I sat alone in her empty apartment, the evidence I had gathered spread across the table. I stared at the luggage tags, the receipts, the screenshots of messages, and I felt a strange clarity. The truth was out, unambiguous and undeniable. The trust we had built was fractured, perhaps beyond repair. I thought about the months and years we had spent together, and the contrast between that life and the reality I now faced was stark. I knew that whatever choice I made next would not only determine the future of our relationship, but also redefine my understanding of honesty, love, and boundaries. I left her apartment that afternoon feeling both exhausted and strangely awake. The drive home was quiet, the city lights flickering past like fragments of memory I couldn't reconcile. I thought about the next steps, the conversations I still needed to have, and the ways I could protect myself from further pain. The week had stripped away my illusion, leaving only the raw truth and the necessity to confront it fully. I understood then that healing would not be immediate, that the aftermath of deception is a process as much as a moment, and that the decisions I made now would carry long after the confrontation ended. After the confrontation, the apartment felt emptier than ever, though it had been empty before. I, 28M, sat on the couch for hours, staring at the luggage tags, the receipts, the messages, trying to make sense of everything. I kept replaying her words, the pauses, the explanations, the half-truths she had offered. Each memory felt layered now, the innocence I had assigned to our time together stripped away by the knowledge that she had allowed another life to exist in parallel with ours. The room smelled faintly of her perfume, the curtains swayed in the breeze, and it all seemed like a stage set for a play I hadn't known I was part of. The first few days were the hardest. Every phone buzz made me flinch, half expecting it to be her, half hoping it wouldn't be. I avoided her messages, though I read them out of habit, as if my fingers needed to know she still existed somewhere beyond the evidence I had uncovered. Friends and family noticed my quiet demeanor, but I brushed off their questions. I didn't want advice, I didn't want sympathy. I only wanted clarity and control over my own next steps. I began journaling, not for her, not for anyone else, but to untangle my thoughts and emotions, to try and articulate the mix of anger, sorrow, and bewilderment that had taken residence inside me. Slowly, the details I had collected became tools, not just reminders of betrayal. The receipts, the emails, the screenshots, they were pieces of a puzzle that gave me leverage over my emotions. I began to understand patterns in her behavior, moments where her story didn't quite align with her actions, instances where I had ignored subtle signs because I wanted to believe the narrative she had given me. Reflection turned to analysis, and analysis turned to resolve. I realized that trust, once fractured in such a deliberate way, couldn't be casually rebuilt. I had to protect myself, not out of vengeance, but to preserve the parts of me that were still whole. In the quiet evenings, I replayed the happier memories with her, the road trips, the late-night talks, the dinners we had cooked together. They were not illusions, but they were incomplete. They existed alongside secrets I hadn't been aware of, and that realization changed their meaning. I started to acknowledge that loving someone didn't guarantee transparency, and that heartbreak could coexist with gratitude for the moments that were genuine. It was a strange duality, but accepting it became part of the process of reclaiming my own sense of reality. A week later, I returned to her apartment one last time to collect the few things I hadn't taken before. I moved quickly, deliberately avoiding looking at anything beyond what I needed. The luggage tags were the last thing I left, tucked carefully into an envelope and set in the back of a drawer where they could serve as both a reminder and a boundary. I didn't feel relief, not entirely. I felt resolve. The confrontation, the discovery, and the processing of the betrayal had shifted something inside me. I realized that while I couldn't undo the past, I could decide how I responded, and that choice would define the next chapter of my life. As I walked away from her building, the city lights stretched out in front of me, unfamiliar and yet filled with possibilities. I thought about the future, about learning to trust again, about the careful way I would approach love and friendship from now on. The week had been a harsh teacher, but it had also given me clarity I hadn't expected. The pain of knowing the truth was still sharp, but it was no longer paralyzing. I had seen the full picture, faced the deception head on, and come out on the other side with a stronger sense of who I was and what I deserved. By the time I returned home, the night was quiet and the apartment felt like my own again. I sat on the couch and exhaled deeply, finally allowing myself to feel the mixture of exhaustion, relief, and resolve that had been building inside me. The luggage tags, Alex Harper, the hidden trips, they were a part of the story now, a chapter that would remain in my memory but no longer control me. I understood that healing wouldn't be immediate, that the echoes of betrayal would linger, but I also knew that I could move forward with integrity, self-respect, and the knowledge that I had faced the truth fully without turning away. I took out my journal one last time that evening and wrote a few lines about clarity, boundaries, and the lessons learned. I reflected on love and deception, on trust and self-preservation, and on the importance of reclaiming control over my own narrative. That night, I slept for the first time in days without the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. I knew the journey ahead would be challenging, but I also knew that facing the truth had given me a strength I hadn't recognized before. I had endured betrayal, but I had emerged with my own sense of self intact, ready to take the next steps in life with eyes wide open and a heart prepared to guard the trust I chose to give.